I'm just going to read a couple of feedback comments that have come through for you, Mark. One from Beatrice over in WA, who's just did your masterclass, which is where you take several horses during a day and you show people the effect of your training. She said the masterclass has been one of the best horse-related demonstrations she's ever attended. To watch Mark working with horses while he explains the horse's behaviour and how he applies his principles was so insightful and invaluable. I'm so grateful I could be there, and the day will stay with me for a long time. And another one that's come through from Adele, who's over in the UK. Best horse trainer I've ever seen. Mark's videos and support have transformed my horse and kept me safe and confident whilst working with him. Thank you so much. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
This week is a collection of general training questions that have come through from our online members. They cover a wide range of topics, so there will be something for everyone in this episode. We're going to cover Mark's challenge series, getting horses to go in the direction or speed that we want them to, and improving confidence with a working equitation obstacle. So we'll start off from the ground and our foundation work, which really is what the challenge series is all about. Mark, can you just give a brief overview of what the challenge series is and why you have it on the membership?
The challenge series is it's a series of tasks and observations, I guess, that people can do with their horses. You know, some of it is observation in the sense of watching for anxiety, just see how horses operate in the paddock, and just noticing things if they're disconnected or connected with us, disinterested, stuff like that. And then it works through different exercises where we can sort of gain a little bit of awareness out of our horses through using the flag as a distraction tool to sort of let go of, I guess, distracted thoughts, and then works through a series of little leading exercises. Those leading exercises are kind of really good exercises to work out where your horse is at in trusting the lead rope, for one, and being accurate on the lead, and also understanding how they trust us on both sides, and can walk by us softly and stuff like that. And it's really good for people who've had a horse that's been driven and stuff, and they're scared of energy. So you work out if that horse is scared of you at any point moving past you, so they can sort of move softly with you in any part of their eye. And then it moves on to some riding exercises, and they're kind of exercises for people just to address or understand how their horse understands the simple pressures, like the pressure of the legs, and how well they respond to that in a simple exercise. And I guess also what I'm trying to do in the challenge is also isolate things a bit more, instead of put everything together and hope the horse understands it. And then there's an exercise that's just trotting, and if a horse can find our rhythm in the trot and they're okay with that, and it just gets people, I think, more aware of their horses, and the horses more aware of us, by actually isolating things and focusing on them things a bit more seriously, opposed to just kind of as I said, putting everything together. It's got some speed control in there, simple things, but they're often things that I think sometimes when I see horses at clinics and I help people, that they've kind of missed in their foundation, and they haven't really paid attention to it. And then there's things that happen later that they're not sure why that's happening. But if you go back and look at some of these things, you'll find that there's some areas there that there's some holes.
That's right. And by isolating, like you said, individual areas to work on, you're sort of just refining it down to a few simple things that you can work on and clearly see if they're functional or not. And then at the same time, you're introducing these core tools that you often refer to in your training. So whether that's the lead rope or a flag or how we present ourselves. And you're also sort of just educating people, aren't you, about how you can best use that and make sure that you're using it in the right way. A lot of people might lead a horse and they think their horse leads really well, but then when they come to do the challenge, they realize that, well, actually, no, the horse has just been mirroring their body language as opposed to understanding feel. So there's quite a few important, like you said, foundational concepts that come through. They also just highlight how you sort of tend to start to look at a horse, assess it, and then how you also build up your training. So it's quite a good reflection for people, to sort of whether you've got a horse that's going or a new horse that you want to start from the beginning with. It's just a good sort of foundation to go back over and go, right, is there anything that a horse doesn't quite understand in the sense of the context of training? So we might jump into the questions because they've come through as people have been doing the challenge series, and they sort of relate outside the challenge, of course, as well. First one comes from Tracy from Australia. She's been doing the second challenge, which is where she's starting to work on feel and the leading. And she's starting to realize when she goes backwards with the lead rope on the ground, the horse starts to walk around her in a circle.
Yeah, so that it's one of the circle, like you won't, like say for instance, if you're working a young horse that hasn't had a lot of groundwork or training, they don't really know the concept of going around us on a circle. So if we were to lead a young horse past us, what's going to happen is they're probably just going to go out in a straight line if we pull the rope out softly, and they're just going to wander out and just search and sometimes look a little bit lost, and that's kind of what we're wanting. A lot of horses that people have done some form of circling or lunging and that sort of thing. So as soon as we get them to go past our shoulder, they automatically start to walk around us like a circle. And it's a very common thing I'm coming across at clinics all the time. Some of those horses that are focused on us, I'm trying to get them to go in straight lines so they can think away. And, direction is something that they also get something for themselves out of, not just focus on us and go in a circle. So I think the key when we get a horse to lead by is actually we stay longer in the leading process, walking with them beside us as we're walking backwards until they really straighten out and get soft. So sometimes I'll do a bit more backwards and forwards and backwards and get them to really feel that lead and not think, oh, I'm just going out and around.
So in this instance, the lead rope is on the ground, so they're being ground tied. She's walking backwards because she's walking away, and then she's going to be using the lead rope to get them to come forwards in those little tiny steps. This is the focus through distraction exercise. It's the second challenge. So for her, how does she get her horse to know that the rope means stand still? Is it just a lot of leading where the leading is quite responsive to the feel?
There's two things in that one you can do. If you've got I'll use the flag a little bit sometimes because some horses have got quite a lot of brace and you don't want to put a bump through the rope too early on a horse that it doesn't know how to back up really, really well, and they've got good mobility and awareness. But the two things you can do when your horse goes to walk forward as you're walking backwards or start to move when the rope's on the ground, you can pop the flag and they'll get a little bit of a shock and step back and go, oh, what was that? And then and that'll stop them and get them to stand there. And that just gets their awareness, and then you walk backwards, and every time they go to come forward, you might just put the flag up in the air and say forward's not available, and they'll look at that and go, oh, forward's not available, I might just stay here. And then when you get right out to the end of the rope, then you can ask them one step at a time, and if they overstep, you just put the flag up, give it a shake. That'll make them less likely to want to sort of come forward, and then you just continue doing that. The next thing you can sort of think about is as they come forward, you can pick up and put a bit of a wiggle or a bump in the rope to say, creating almost like a hotter or colder effect, as you're creating a friction when the horse comes forward by putting a wave or a wriggle in the rope. So it's sort of you're creating the space in front of them gets a bit more frictious, so they realise that that's not available, and then when they start to realise that, then you pick up the rope, walk them a step or two, and then place the rope. If they don't place with the rope, you can put that wriggle through it so they feel the friction and they'll stop again, and just so they get that clarity of what you want. And ideally in the long run, you don't really want the flag because you're kind of using the rope, but you're also using the flag, so you're actually using their eyes, then you're using their head to guide them. So eventually, just in a few lessons, you want to be throwing away the flag away and just putting it all through the rope.
Right, but also the wiggle needs to go as well, presumably, so that they actually understand the stillness and they understand feel.
Yeah. Once they get the idea, they'll realise when you hang the knot that they're to stand still. And in a lot of your other leading lessons, you'll find that if you're moving the knot to move their thoughts and feet, and then you place the knot, they really get the idea that placing means standing, and they start to pick it up pretty quickly. A lot of times there's still little habits in people and old habits in horses from what people have taught them, where they've kind of held the knot softly and moved the horse with a stick or something like that. And then what happens is, so that's why I say to people, when you use a stick to move a horse's around, like their haunches around or something like that, a lot of people tend to just hold the knot still to block the horse, and then they move their body with an energy or a stick or something. Then the horse starts to learn that they move while the rope's still. And I discourage that, because that actually makes them a lot less likely to ground tie.
Okay, and so the flag is offering a bit of a distraction, like you said, and it's making things a little bit clearer about what they maybe should or shouldn't be doing, also increasing their awareness. Now, I've got next question is from Kaz from Australia. She's also doing the challenge, and she's wondering how she can stop her little Mini from eating grass during the challenge. She's just like continuously taking these snatches of grass. So she's just wondering, should she draw her back, just say that door is closed, so, drawing her back into her with the rope and starting again, or, does she make a noise or a tap or the flag, so that kind of distraction to say, no, that's not the right thing when her head goes down? Which one would be the better way to go?
I'd probably not let the Mini out on a long rope until the Mini is in a more centered mindset and knowing that the grass is not available. So I'd probably do a little bit more of the close leading work and spend, some lessons in the grassy area where you're working, saying grass is not available. So while you got the holder on, while you got the rope on, grass is not available. Opposed to kind of constantly have to pull on the rope and say from a distance, say, hey, don't eat grass, come back, reset, try again, don't eat grass, come back, reset, try again. I would actually maybe set it up so the Mini starts to realise that whilst we're working in that area, that the grass is not available. And when you see the horse stop thinking about the grass and be more centred and not just get distracted with the grass every time it gets out on a long lead, actually you're not going to let it on a long lead until it's in more of a better mindset. When they're in a better mindset, so basically, you might only give them a metre a lead, where you can just pick up and say, no, the grass is not available, or, bang your leg with the flag or something every time they think about the grass, until that you can guarantee that they're not thinking about the grass. Like the Ranger's Apprentice, don't practice till you get it right, practice till you don't get it wrong. So you're practicing where you can control the situation a bit more in a smaller kind of space that you've allowed through your leading, until the horse does not even think about the grass, and then you incrementally let them go out a little bit further. So it might take a little bit longer, but either way, you're wanting a Mini in a mindset that it's not just snatching for every. It's not just got impulsive thoughts all the time that go, oh, what's over there? I want to eat that, or I want to do that. So basically work on a better mindset, and then when the horse is more disciplined, then you give them more space on that rope to search and travel a little bit. But you've got to be aware that letting a horse go towards its thoughts, which what we're encouraging, can mean that, oh, I'm going to go towards my thoughts and eat grass. But if you just make a no grass lesson for a while, they'll start to recognise that okay, that we're not eating grass, because out in the paddock, horses act on impulse all the time. So, and when they're on a rope and we're working with them, we're trying to still have a horse that's kind of thinks about things, but it doesn't just act on that impulse all the time, that I can eat when I want, I can do this when I want.
Okay, so it sounds like you just need to do enough, Kaz, to get the mind to be distracted, not necessarily move the body. So you're going to have to work that one out in terms of what you need to do to get her to stop. So like Mark said, maybe that slap is enough. Maybe the flag might need to come into play. Maybe quick, just sort of pull on the rope or something. Just go,
and it's just and it's just getting her to work a little closer, so that you can manage the situation better, until you're not managing the situation, the horse is, and then you slowly increase the space, the working space.
We'll move on to the next question, which is about a horse that won't go into the trot. It's from Katie, who's from the States. She's recently found you. She has done a lot of work with another trainer who apparently is along similar lines to you. She has a 10-year-old mare that unfortunately has had an awful lot of owners in before she had her. She's had her for about 3 years. But just to shed some light on that, she had 5 owners in less than a year through no fault of her own, Katie says. But then she landed with Katie. So what she's done is she's sort of done a restart with her. She was quite frozen up. So she's sort of used these other trainers' techniques in that restart. She hasn't really had any big problems until recently, and she's just sort of trying a different approach. So she's come across you. She said that she doesn't shut down like she used to, and she has been doing really well until the last couple of weeks. And what happens is that she will no longer go into a trot without a ton of work and help from someone on the ground. Now, I'm not quite sure whether she's currently riding her and trying to get her in a trot, or she's on the ground and she's having to do a lot of work on the ground to get her in a trot. I'm going to assume the latter, so I'm not quite sure what the situation is on that one. But anyway, once she's in that trot, she will just stay in it, and she goes really well. And if she's asked to slow down, she can do that, or if she goes into a canter, she can do that. But if you ask for that trot on the walk, all she will do is just stop and not move. Now, Katie says that she doesn't think she's shut down in this position. She seems to be aware of what's going on around her. She's noticed that she's aware of the kids playing, that she's aware of stuff that's happening in the yards, the chickens, that kind of thing. But she's just not quite sure how to get her to be a bit more responsive, forward moving, have more energy. They've tried asking her to steer and to change her focus, but she still won't move. She'll soften in the rein, but she will just stand there. Oh, that sounds like maybe it's under saddle. So she has been seen by the vet too, and chiropractor. Pain's been ruled out. So any insights on sort of a bit of a convoluted story, but an interesting scenario?
Yeah, well, firstly, the last part of the question, or the explanation is that it sounds like the horse does more lateral flexion than it does following a lead rope or a rein. So to me, I don't work on it. Well, I may, but in an order that I'm trying to help people, sometimes I tend to work on steering before transition to the legs. And by the sounds of it, that horse has been taught lateral flexion, but not to commit with movement and thought change. So if the bit's slipping through the mouth and the horse is just bending and giving and you're not getting any movement, then I'd go to something like a halter or a side pull in a safe, arena or something, and just keep holding pressure and lifting and rocking until the horse moves its feet. And don't reward lateral flexion. Wait till the horse follows with movement, and then eventually the thoughts and the movement will start to follow the rein. And then through that one rein start, you actually get perpetual motion. So you become, and I've explained this before on various podcasts about being a parking officer, and every time the horse has a still stop, backward thought or whatever, you just pick up on the rein until the horse starts to move again, until the horse has a constant flow between left rein, right rein, tight turns, U-turns, all that sort of stuff. And then basically you've got a constant flow in your horse, and any sort of thoughts where the horse gets anchored, you can unanchor them by picking up a rein and directing their thoughts. So, that's why, if they're flexing and the bit's slipping, it's, as I say, you go to another tool. That's not going to happen. And you just wait on them until they start to move. And then the next thing, what happens when you put legs on a horse, a lot of times their mind goes back to your heels, and then that causes them to suck back, and then they stop. Okay, so the next thing is you have to work on very good leg transition. Now, this is not in the trot, this is within the walk. So sometimes I might, so a common order that you see everyone teaching leg aids is seat leg or core seat leg. I just ride on with a relaxed seat. I don't use my seat on horses that I'm teaching heels to, and I just use my heels. If I squeeze that horse and I just feel him kind of suck back and not really go forward to the legs, then I have to work on that. So a lot of times the order is after you use your heels is you squeeze first and then you bump and then you rattle and bump and get big with the bumps until the horse rattles along. If you work on that order all the time, the horse starts to anticipate that squeeze means you're going to start bumping and maybe getting bigger at the bumping. So then they kind of automatically know what's coming. So they kind of suck back and brace up to that a bit. So a lot of times in that case, once the horse is freed up and I was the parking officer, I've got perpetual motion through the reins, then I'll go back to saying I'm going to bump first, and the horse may not like it. It may pin its ears a bit. It may get a bit worried about it, but then I'll stop and then I'll bump again. And if it tries to go forward, I'll actually back it up and say, no, forward's not available. I'm just bumping you to say I have legs. Are you aware of them? And when the horse goes, yes, I'm a bit wriggly and I'm aware of your legs, then I might just sort of sit quietly. Then I'll just wave my legs by opening and waving them and just not bumping the sides, really just waving them. And when I feel that awareness come up and they know that I'm using my legs, then I'll squeeze them, and that'll start to get them inclined to want to go forwards. Because when I've bumped them and they've thought back, I might be backing them and bumping them a little bit. So what's the opposite of backwards? Forwards. So then the next thing they're going to do when you squeeze them, they're going to want to go forward, and that gets them forward. But within the walk, you want to be able to put a feel on your horse and they just float forward nice and softly. And then I would get the walk from slow walk to fast walk going really well, all the way back to slow walk, back up to fast walk. And then you'll feel that horse will be going right up through the walk really, really nicely. And then you'll feel them wanting to trot. And that's when you just kind of squeeze the walk up a little faster. And they go, I feel like trotting. And as they feel like trotting, you just loosen the legs and let them kind of float into trot without any pressure on. And that usually fixes it. I really think, and I'm not 100% because I'm not there, that the horse is not really as responsive to the legs as it should be, and it's causing too much of a backward thought. So you're trying to create a forward thought in the legs. So first of all, perpetual motion through the reins. Don't reward lateral flexion, reward movement. And then secondly, create awareness to the heels, and then use the heels to squeeze the horse forward and work on very good transition until that's working, and then start to go back to the trot.
So, Katie, if you go on the membership and you put in the search bar perpetual motion, or perhaps you might do a search on lateral or flexion, you'll come up with some. I know there's some really good videos there. Mark's gone through horses that have had that problem. They got stuck in lateral flexion, and you can see him working them through it using and then ending up with perpetual motion. So I think you'll find some really relevant videos on there for you. Mark, the next question is from Chrissy from Australia, a little bit similar. She's got a 5-year-old off the track gelding that she's had for a few months. She's got a couple of issues. She thinks they might be linked. He isn't very good at leading. He can be quite heavy. So if she's pulling him on the lead on the ground, what he can do is stick his head right out and just open his mouth and chew the air. And he's not sort of particularly light going backwards and forwards and that kind of thing. But her main issue is when they're riding, unless he's pointed in the direction that he wants to go, which is usually towards the gate or out of the paddock, he will not move. She's tried letting him walk towards the gate and then opening the rein to attempt him to turn him in an arc to go back in another direction. But as soon as he realizes what they're trying to do, he just plants his feet and braces against the bit. She's tried holding, she's tried waiting for him to take a step, but her arm normally gets sore before that point. His head can be pushed right out, his mouth is open, and he's chewing the bit profusely. She's avoiding kicking after listening to some of your podcasts advising against it. This is a new horse, and she also doesn't want to aggravate him by putting too much pressure on him if he's locked up and doesn't know what his reaction might be. So any thoughts on perhaps, should she be trying a side pull like you mentioned?
Yeah, if the bit's slipping through their mouth, definitely a side pull, but because you can hold and rock and wait, and you're not slipping it through their mouth, you're not causing excess pain or anything like that. But the biggest thing I'm sort of thinking right now is I get a lot of those big clunky race horses that are very stiff, and yesterday afternoon I worked on a lesson with one same thing, trying to get perpetual motion through the reins, big lumpy horse, and eventually you get that flow through the rein. And just another story of a lady who did a clinic in Western Australia. She thanked me for her standard bred pacer who used to suddenly take off on that was one of those big clunky stiff horses, And she worked on a one rein start for 3 months, but now she can ride the horse. He hasn't bolted, at all anymore, and he's going nicely in the reins. But she worked on that one rein start, unlocking him for 3 months. And people say, I don't know if I've got 3 months to sit there and teach a horse to steer. And I said, well, that's you'll appreciate 3 months if you don't do it. And after 3 months, your horse is still bolting and locking up in the reins, and you've still got to go back to something, important to teach it. So, but by the sounds of the leading, he needs a lot of leading work. He's locked up in a lead rope, and the seriousness of it is, I take this very seriously, because leading is steering and steering is leading. And you might get another trainer help you, or someone say, oh, just whack him with a stick a bit and get him to go forward. Once you got forward, you'll be right. Just remember, what you can't steer from a standstill or even a basic walk, you won't steer from a gallop or a canter. So those horses that are properly locked up, well, if they get going, like this pacer that would suddenly just take off and grab the bit, when they lock up in a run, they lock up in a run. So, people want forward and then I say, but you want forward, but at what expense do you want forward? I'm not going to put a Ferrari engine in a mini minor that's got tiny brakes and little wheels to steer. I want big brakes and I want a good steering wheel before I put a big Ferrari motor in that vehicle. So, really what I want to do is really wake up that leading, so whether you use a flag on the ground or something and get him to kind of search a bit, bang the flag, he'll search, he'll pull against you. You might have both hands. You might have to walk backwards with him, but you need to get to a stage that you can pull on that rope and he blinks, he thinks, and he floats and leads, and wherever that rope goes, he goes, and forwards to backwards, and just start to change his mindset to picking up a feel on the rope means search and move and search and follow and find your balance and directing your thoughts and all that. And you got to keep doing it, and you got to really change his leading mentality, because that's the mentality you're going to be using to help him under saddle steer. And then when you get on him, a side pull would be a better option. And then you just stay in there and show him that I'm going to keep pulling and stay in here till you follow that around and follow that around and follow that backwards and left, right, backwards, left 50,000 times if you have to, until he's fully unlocked and he's following that lead rope on the ground and under saddle. It's a hard job with those horses, and I don't have the magic answer to just to say, hey, do this. I've seen a lot of them, and me myself as got a bit of a sweat up walking around, getting them to lead up and get them soft. But if I had 2 weeks with that horse, I wouldn't have got a sweat up in that one lesson, because I probably would have taken it in certain chunks where they get awareness to the rope again. And a lot of them, they've just lost awareness to the rope. And sometimes you're just doing an awareness to the rope lesson, pick up the rope when their kind of eyes are dull and they're not really listening. I'll give it a bump, and then they'll go, blink, blink, what was that for? And I go, I was just making sure that you knew I was picking up the rope, because what they've done is they've just shut out. And it's like my explanation to horses like that have been on, in the racing industry, and people on them all the time banging and bumping and all that sort of stuff. It'd be like putting an introvert in a nightclub and telling him that this is a 24-hour-a-day nightclub, people are doof-doofing all day long, and that you have to live there. That's your new home. So they're going to make a little kind of couch in the corner where they can read their book, and eventually all that doof-doofing, all those people jumping around all the time, just becomes like a blur. And then, they've got to go to the toilet. They just walk through the people as if they're not there, and they go back and read their book, and they just zone out to all that white noise. And that's what happens to these horses. So when you're kind of pulling on the rope, it's just a blur, and it's not really making any connection to his brain or his thoughts. So yeah, there's a way you got to break through in leading to get through that, and then you got to get into the leading, and it is a tough job. And yeah, there are certain things in getting him in a better mindset that'll help him lead better, but you've really got to work on, waking up the leading, get the brain ticking, get the desire up, get a bit of anxiety up in him to search too. Like, he needs to be searching and thinking, what options do I have? The caution, get the caution in him and on the ground when you're leading him. So he's really sort of ticking and searching, and you might spend a couple of weeks just on the ground teaching him to be actively searching and following a lead with energy and desire.
And that'll make the difference under saddle. And it's good that you mentioned about, just be conscious of what might happen when they get faster if they lock up. Especially as, like you said, it's a new horse, Chrissy. You don't know what you've got underneath you. So I hope you take that on board, and that's helpful to you. Caution on your side, definitely. Mark, the final question for this week comes from Briar from New Zealand, and this is the one that asks about the question to do with working equitation. She's got a horse who's lost his confidence with bridges. He was doing fine until, and I really shouldn't laugh, but I had a little giggle when I read it. But he walked over a bridge, and it turned out that it was a seesaw bridge. And so as it came up with the seesaw, well, he thought it jumped up and bit him, and that was it. He's been terrified of them ever since. He realized, if he realizes that the bridge is solid, then he's okay. But every time they come across a new bridge and that they have to walk over it in a competition, he really, really struggles. His confidence is really low. So she's just wondering, is there anything that you can suggest to help sort of minimize his reactivity, improve his confidence and his trust onto stepping on things? He's fine with other obstacles, just those bridges.
Yeah, my gut feel is I'm thinking there's a certain amount of possible bit of freeze in his mindset. If it's not freeze, he's just very, very cautious, and now he's sort of once bitten, twice shy kind of thing. But you have to get very good proprioception in leading, as in he's very aware of the lead rope. I should say he has to have good proprioception, and that comes through some of the lessons that I do when I just move a flag around them and get them to be super aware where that flag is, being able to move a foot, being able to sort of process every ounce of what's happening around them, where it is, and be able to adjust their body quietly and softly within millimeters, not just jump away from something, but move your foot just a little bit when I put the flag, kind of go past your foot, and they just kind of get really aware of their whole body and really floaty and more cat-like in their movement. And then once they're sort of like that, then you get leading so down to a millimeter that you can kind of activate a tinier step and a loose step, not just a kind of clunky forward step, but you can put a feel on a rope and all the muscles loosen and the feet are soft, and they really trust that lead rope. They have to trust that lead rope before you take them to obstacles, especially like horse floats as a classic, horse trailers if you're in another country. So basically, with that leading control, they trust that lead rope. And you can direct their thoughts really nicely in it. And then from there, you take them to solid obstacles where you lead them so, I guess, to the millimeter that you can actually get them just to place their foot and just test it with a tiny bit of their foot and then back their foot straight off it. So you can say to them, you can always withdraw. So you take them to an obstacle, and you might back them forward, go back forward, and keep doing that so they know they can withdraw from the obstacle, then they can come towards it. And of course, you control them to the millimeter. They know you just want them to test it, not just go on it. And once they realize you're not asking them on it, they'll just test it, sniff it, they'll touch it with their foot, and then you back them off and say, good, you just survived that near-death experience. And they go, oh, I was just testing it, and you said I could move away from it. That's great. You don't want me to go over it. And I go, no, I don't want you to go over it. I want you to test it. And then they go, oh, righto. Now we're just testing it, not going over it. Well, I've got a bit more confidence because I know the back door's open and I can go back if I'm too frightened. And I know you don't want me to go across it. So I might just, get a bit more curious and maybe get a bit interested in it. Then then you get them to test the obstacle that kind of, that drops down a bit. So you might have a little teeter-totter kind of thing where they touch it and it moves, the floor moves underneath them, and get them good at testing it again, and then take them away from it. So you're saying, I don't want you to walk on it yet. I just want you to learn to trust it. Trust the lead, then trust the obstacle, but you have to trust your own movement. And, then you just slowly go about that. But most horses that I've had that kind of tend to get a fright and jump off obstacles, in their mind, they were just going across an obstacle and they were just thinking, well, if I get to the other side, I'll be safe. And then suddenly that obstacle changes and then they panic and never want to get on one again. And that's why I say, no, we're not going to the other side. We're going to learn to trust the floor of the obstacle, and that's all we're going to do. And then once they learn to get confident again, trust your leading, trust their own mobility, with having good proprioception and awareness, depth awareness, all that sort of thing. They have to have good proprioception to process the depth of a step, the height of a step, everything. And when they're in that mindset, that's the mindset that you can actually get them to really think about getting confidence at those, strange obstacles. The other classic example is putting horses in horse floats, because I say to people, you're loading that horse in a quiet float and then it turns into a vibrating platform. If it wasn't a horse float, a horse trailer, here's a scenario. If you had a vibrating platform, would you load the horse on the vibrating platform and then turn it on? Or would you turn the vibrating platform on and teach the horse to load on the vibrating platform? Because I know if you did you would put the horse on a quiet platform, press the vibrating platform, and then as soon as it starts to vibrate, the horse would jump off like when a cat sees a cucumber. Okay, so but if you loaded it on the vibrating platform, the horse would fully be aware of what's happening. And I say that with horse floats because these obstacles, teeter-totters, are exactly the same obstacle as going onto a horse trailer. That obstacle will move at some stage, and it's going to vibrate. In a horse trailer, it's going to make noise and all sorts of things. So you're actually wanting to load the horse on the vibrating, moving, noisy obstacle very quietly, so they get brave and confident, not lured into the idea that this is safe and then it's not.
Okay, I hope that helps. Briar, there's some great tips in there for you. Good luck with your challenges for doing the working equitation. So that's really good, Mark. It's great to hear you're helping people all over the world. And we do love these podcasts where you're filling in all these gaps in our knowledge. So thank you very much. And we will talk to you again next week, where we're going to ask you about clicker training.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Anyway, thanks, Jenny, and thank you, everybody, and thanks for the wonderful feedback. It's really means a lot to me to be able to be in an industry and help support the horses out there. So.
You've been listening to Australia's very own Mark Langley, a horseman with many insights from his decades of dabbling. Jump online to keep learning. marklangley.com.au